flip the
Oh
fuck
my
out.
God, it's unquestionable, and it's sad. So what, like you were saying, these multiple points of departure, I see all over the place. I see in different sub communities, these sub segregations that we have, these sub
Echo chambers.
Yeah, sub echo chambers. It is so toxic, so destructive. Yet we're going to try to claim that we're skeptical, that we're critical thinkers, that we are somehow better. And folks, if there's anything you take away from this chat between Jonathan and me, it's that we're not. Jonathan said it earlier. We're people. We're just like everybody else. We're not any better. How much better of a world if everyone were trying to at least... I made a meme yesterday because I'm so fucking sick and tired of it. Imagine a world where we spend more time listening to the other person than we do trying to shout over them. Imagine what kind of world that would actually be. I don't agree with Imam Dai. I don't agree with him at all. There's no such thing as God. Islam is horrible. It's a hate-filled, misogynistic religion that wants to kill anybody who is not a Muslim, Jew, or Christian. Plain, black and white. It's in their goddamn book. But that man as an individual is trying to welcome people into a community. He's trying to give a home to the gay and lesbian community who happen to be believers.
Yeah, we didn't mention that.
Yeah,
the imam is actually a out homosexual imam.
And he gets a lot of hate from within his own community.
Yeah.
So my point is that I will stand with Imam Dai, who cares about people. Yes, he believes. Yes, he thinks that there's a sky daddy watching him. But first and foremost, he will build the community. He will support human beings. He will try to make the world a better place in the little way that he can. And I'll stand by him long before I'll stand by somebody who is more bent on, fighting on Twitter with a creationist or trying to tell a Christian why there is no God on their cell phone while they're walking by a homeless person on the other side of the street, and they can't be bothered to stop and drop $1 or $2 in the hat that the homeless person has sitting out there. And that's the crux of it for me. That's where I am in my own personal evolution. Our community is focused on the wrong shit. If you go to a conference, I saw this kerfuffle blow up last week, I think it was, and it breaks my heart because somebody or a few people wanted to take a critical look at the conferences that are happening, the secular conferences. And the point that he made was that these conferences have now become echo chambers. We're talking to us and we're validating us. And that's all that's happening over a day or two or three. And there's some definite legitimate points. May not always be true. I don't believe in concrete crap to begin with. May not always be true, but there is some validity to that statement. And to watch how that person got treated by atheists because he ventured into, not uncharted water, but waters that were buoyed off that you don't walk into. You do not denigrate atheist conferences. Bullshit, you don't. We should be able to look at ourselves. We better look at ourselves, and we better ask those damn questions about ourselves. Are we inviting Christians to go to those conferences? No, that's not their place. Why? Ask the questions. Why isn't it their place? Why don't we put a Christian on stage in front of 500 atheists, have them give their little presentation, and then have them ask questions? Why? Instead of saying no, ask why. And you can hear it in my voice probably. I'm getting fired up. We're so busy asserting that we've stopped asking questions. All of us have.
It's called civil discourse.
Yeah.
One of the things, and this is going along with what you were just saying, if you were to ask a lot of, and please, by all means, if this does not apply to you, please don't worry about it. But I am going to say, because there are those of us in our community, that if you were to ask them what is the absolute worst thing you could possibly think of that could happen to America, they would say, Donald Trump gets in the office and he taps Ted Cruz as his running mate. Granted, that would be absolutely terrifying, but what scares me even more is something that's even more realistic, and every person in the entire world is exactly the same, thinks exactly the same, without having a broad spectrum of everything, this life really wouldn't be worth living. It really wouldn't, because as the old adage says, variety is the spice of life. If you don't think that's true, man, I pity you.
you got that spot on. It's so frustrating when you talk about those things because of that. We are skeptical, but I really, if anybody wants to really resist that to the bitter end, I ask you to think about, are we really, like I said earlier, my issue is I've watched it. I've watched other fellow skeptics, atheists, announce that they will not vote Democrat, and I've watched them be slaughtered. I myself am not a Democrat. I don't vote for the two-party system. I absolutely abhor the two-party system. It is the crux of all of our problems. I will argue that to my grave, and I have yet to hear a convincing argument otherwise. We always rally around the winning team. We have to be the winners. We have to get out and vote. If people don't vote, 40%, 42, 45% of America doesn't vote because we're disenfranchised, because we're jaded, because we watched this verbal bombing happen from side to side. We watch a SCOTUS appointment or a nominee, and we watch the childish juvenile antics that happen around this nomination for the past 2 weeks now. I mean, it's embarrassing. And the reason is, if we're going to claim we're skeptics, I challenge that, because what the hell, if we're skeptics, let me give you a personal anecdote that every single person listening to this can relate to. Relate your politics to your personal life. Anytime you've had an interpersonal conflict with somebody, you and one other person, nowhere in there, in that fighting and that arguing and that screaming, is the truth. The truth only comes out when a mediator comes in and says, hey guys, this is what I'm hearing from you. This is what I'm hearing from you. Have you thought about blah, blah, blah? And that's where the reality is when we get those other voices added, that's when we start actually having those progressive conversations, and that translates to our politics. Unfortunately, if we're truly skeptics, if we're so analytical and critical, why is it that we haven't looked at that? Why is it that you insist on voting Democrat? Because they win. If I vote for anybody else, it's a loss. Do you know how many tens of millions of people say that? It's just such an old argument for me. It truly is. And it's that polarization. And I'm with you. I don't like where we're headed. 5 years from now, I don't like what I see. I don't like where I have lost the will to fight for so many people because of who they are and the way they treat people. And that's on our side of the fence, unfortunately. And it's because of that polarization that we have to have things our way and our way only. And we've developed this community, these sub-communities, this micro-segmentation where if you don't belong to this subgroup, you're an outlier. And therefore, we must attack to defend this popular figure, this figurehead that we have. And I'm seeing that in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different micro-segmentations of the non-belief community.
Well, at least there's one bright and shining lining of the gloomy doom cloud that you're saying there, is that it's not just us. The other side does it too. So at least there's that. There's plenty of backbiting on the other side too. So
so we're both going backwards together.
pretty much, yeah. It's and another thing, what you were saying about is, and by the way, everyone, just before you try to flip out on me, yes, I am a registered Democrat. But one of the things I see, and it has been shown many times in the Democratic Party, one of the reasons why we don't win is because we don't vote. But yet you'll still, and when I say you, I mean, if this applies to you, take it to heart. If it doesn't, just let it roll off your back. You can't complain if you don't vote.
Well, here, let me give you a counter argument to that. This is one of the things that frustrates me. There are many states where it doesn't matter if you vote or not. I lived in Alabama for 3 years. If you are a Democrat, you do not need to show up. You'll never win. The stats are there. If you don't believe me, go Google Alabama voting history. You're not going to win. It will not happen. So your vote doesn't. But
they are winner take all too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Here's the crux of my argument that let's look at us first before we worry about them and othering. That doesn't do a damn thing. We need to look at us first. Here's the thing. The things that we champion will scare other people. Now, 99.9% of the people listening to this are going to cling to their belief and their biases, and they're not going to hear what I say. Great. I'm talking to the 0.1% of you who will critically think and actually give this an opportunity. When we sit there and we champion these efforts as the way forward, the right side of history, women's right to their body, abortion, I agree with you on that. Guess what? Okay, so have you heard that? Okay, you've heard that. Great. Now, the fact is, tens of millions of other people do not agree with you. How are you going to get them to hear you? If you keep punching them in the face with the same message over and over, guess what they're going to do when it comes down to Donald and Hillary? They're going to go with Donald. Even if they don't like it, they're still going to go with Donald because you scared them on this. If we pulled back, if we stop being so goddamn cocky and thinking we've got all of this figured out and actually tried to meet other people where they are and understand where they're coming from, we might be able to have a greater effect. But we don't do that because, we've got our pride and we're right and they're wrong and everybody others and everybody goes tribal and none of this stuff gets fixed. And like I told this person who said my overconfidence is my greatest weakness, I was saying this stuff 10, 12, 15 years ago. I said we were headed down this road with someone like Donald Trump. I had no idea it would actually be him, but someone like him because we're getting more and more polarized. And why? Because everybody's right and nobody and the other side is always wrong. And I don't have to listen to you because social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook has ensured that I will be validated as soon as I post something, and damn the rest of you. And guess what, folks? As much as you're doing that with your atheist friends, your Christian friends are doing the same thing with their Christian friends, and we're all moving further apart. Is that the world we want?
Nope. Because, again, like I said, civil discourse.
Yeah.
That's not how that happens.
How do we do it, though? How do we fix that? I don't care about their side. How do we on our side fix that?
If I knew that, I would win the Nobel Prize.
If you knew that, you would be Sam Harris being worth $2 million and getting paid $2,000 per episode on Patreon. But we're not going to talk about that point right now.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah. The only way that it's going to happen is there's going to have to be a sea change in the community. And again, my podcast, I can call it a community. That we need to start learning how to sit down and again have civil discourse, which means like actual real debate, not like the Republican debate where it's name calling. No, it's you make a point, I rebut. You make a second rebuttal, and we go back and forth in a calm, rational manner.
Yep.
We have to get back to that. There are of course the professionals that do it. That the bad thing about that is they are the outliers. They're not the norm. The normal day-to-day atheist and skeptic needs to start remembering the things that made us, well, especially if you're a skeptic and an atheist, you don't necessarily have to be a rational human being to be an atheist, but I'd say there's a fair majority of atheists that are quote unquote rational, not to say that they aren't in the first place, but we need to get back to the roots of our intellectual past,
Yep. I'm with you. Sometimes the questions are much more important than the answers. I have no idea how we get there, but what's more concerning for me is I don't see that interest. I don't see that motivation to actually start asking the questions that you were just posing for folks, or at least facilitating that environment for them to ask those questions. And this just may be the jaded me. And hopefully one of your listeners will reach out and say, no, actually, I've been seeing this. And that'll be great. I hope somebody reaches out and says that. But what I see is that everybody is so comfortable and so reaffirmed by their own echo chamber that they're not interested in it. And that's why I know you had struggles trying to have the earlier version of this show and to have those conversations, but that's why I salute you, because at least you tried. There are people out there who aren't even trying, who could have a great impact because of